They laughed when you fell. Not just a little full throat, teeth-baring, venom-laced laughter, like hyenas surrounding a wounded lion. Because in their world, the fall is the end. In their minds, a stumble is proof of weakness. And your silence, your refusal to scream, to beg, to break that terrified them more than any retaliation ever could. But they mistook silence for surrender. They mistook stillness for defeat. What they failed to understand is that some storms don't scream. Some hurricanes don't howl. Some fires don't flicker. Some just burn quietly, completely, until there's nothing left. You didn't speak because you were building. You didn't strike back because you were studying. Every insult they hurled, every knife they twisted, they all landed. But not where they hoped. They landed in the part of you that doesn't forget. The part of you that stores pain like fuel. That stacks humiliation like ammunition. That doesn't heal, it hardens. You became your own crucible. Not to be saved, to be sharpened. See, they live for the spectacle. They need your reaction to feel powerful. Without it, they are nothing, just noise in an empty room. And when you refused to collapse under their spotlight, you became untouchable. They couldn't figure out how to control someone who refused to play their game. They talked. You built. They mocked. You trained. They watched. You vanished. And in that silence they began to rot. Because when you disappear, they can't feed. And when they can't feed, they decay. These people, these parasites, they never had power. They just had your attention. The moment you took that away, their empire began to crumble. Brick by brick, their illusion fell apart. Their confidence was a mask. Their dominance was a performance. Without an audience, they wither. Without control, they panic. And you were never broken. You were focused. Focused on rising through wreckage. Focused on turning scars into armor. Focused on building something so unstoppable that by the time they realized what you were doing, it was too late. Let them pretend they matter. Let them claw at relevance. Let them whisper your name in the darkness of their own creation. Because you know something they don't. You've already won. Not because you destroyed them, but because you outgrew them. You surpassed them in silence, while they were too busy performing for a crowd that doesn't care. There is no revenge. There is no vengeance. There's only distance. And distance is the death of relevance. They stare at what you've become and call it luck. Because to acknowledge your strength would mean acknowledging their failure. And that's a pill they will never swallow. So they'll call you cold, detached, ruthless, good. Because you didn't come this far to be liked. You didn't survive the war just to fit in. You rose from ashes they left you in. And now you stand unshaken, unbent, and utterly alone. Not because you were abandoned, but because you refused to stay small. They build ladders. You became the mountain. And now they tremble at the base, screaming at a summit they'll never reach. They don't hate you because you failed, they hate you because you didn't. Because every time they thought they buried you, you came back sharper. Every time they thought they had the last word, your silence echoed louder. They hate you because your success exposes their cowardice. You kept your head down long enough for your enemies to forget you existed. And now they're remembering too late. They're remembering the times you took the blame just to keep the peace. The times you swallowed your pride to avoid war. The times you stayed silent when every bone in your body screamed to speak. They mistook mercy for weakness. And now they're watching that mercy rot into indifference. Because you don't get the old you back, not after betrayal, not after ridicule, not after the slow suffocation of trust. You burned the bridge, and you never looked back. There's no redemption arc here, no happy ending for them. Only consequence, only silence, and that silence, that's your empire now. An empire built not on vengeance but on evolution. You didn't just overcome, you transformed. While they stayed stagnant, addicted to their own reflection, you became unrecognizable. You turned into something forged in silence, shaped by scars, driven by rage but calm, always calm. Like the ocean before a tidal wave. They don't even know how to fight you anymore. Because you stopped fighting them. You're fighting for something bigger now. Yourself. Your legacy. Your peace. They're stuck in a loop, still playing games that no longer matter. Still looking for reaction, for weakness, for cracks. But you are not cracking. You're ascending. There's a difference between surviving and becoming untouchable. You didn't survive them. You transcended them. You know what power is now. Not control. Not manipulation. Not popularity. Real power is indifference. Real power is walking away without explanation. Real power is living a life they can't even comprehend. And they will feel that power every time they see your name. Every time they remember how you used to bleed, and now you don't. How you used to tremble, and now you walk through fire like it's air. How they used to be the storm, and now you are the storm. They can talk. Let them. They can spin their stories, gather their sympathizers, play their victim roles with rehearsed precision. But deep down they know. They know they lost the moment you stopped needing anything from them. The moment your love turned to silence. The moment your fire went cold, not extinguished, but contained, controlled, unforgiving. Your silence is not absence. It's judgment. And that judgment is eternal. They could have grown. They could have healed. They could have walked with you. But they chose pride. They chose cruelty. They chose to make you the villain in their shallow little narrative. And now, they're the side character in your saga. The forgotten name in your rise. The ashes under your feet. Because that's what happens when you bet against the one who has nothing left to lose. They thought they'd win because they had the numbers, the followers, the popularity. But they forgot the oldest truth in every battlefield. One focused mind can dismantle an army. One broken soul that chose to build instead of break is unstoppable. And you were never just broken. You were evolving. And now you walk in rooms they said you'd never enter. You breathe air they swore you'd never taste. You make moves they can't predict, build things they can't sabotage, and live at a level they never imagined. You are everything they feared you'd become. Because you never stopped. You never surrendered. You used your tears to water your roots. You used your isolation as insulation. You didn't climb your way out, you became the ladder. And now you stand here not to brag, not to gloat, but to make something very, very clear. This wasn't about them. It never was. It was about every night you laid in bed, replaying conversations, feeling like you were the problem. It was about every time you over-explained yourself to people who never cared. It was about every betrayal you ate in silence. Every promise they broke while smiling to your face. Every warning you ignored because you believed in the good in people who only came to drain you. You owe them nothing. Not a message. Not a chance. Not a goodbye. They were a season. You are a legacy. And legacies don't beg to be understood. They're written in stone, not sentiment. So keep rising. Not to prove them wrong, but because you were always meant to. Keep building. Not out of spite, but because it's in your blood. Keep walking. Because what's behind you isn't worth a glance. Let them sit in the wreckage of the empires they built on your name. Let them chew on the silence they once mocked. Let them choke on the dust of your absence. You are not their memory. You are their reckoning. And your silence, it's not retreat. It's dominance. Let them hear that echo every time they close their eyes. Let them feel the distance like a scream in their chest. Because you didn't survive them. You outlived them. And now, you are the ghost they can never bury. The fire they can never kill. The storm they will never outrun. You are not what they made you. You are what they feared you'd become. And now that you've arrived, don't stop. Don't slow down. Don't look back. This is your throne. This is your legacy. And they are just echoes in the silence you now own. So let them whisper. Let them huddle together in their circles of self-pity and revisionist history. Let them rewrite the past in their heads to paint themselves as the wounded ones, as if they didn't wield the knife. As if they weren't the architects of your collapse. But here's what they'll never erase. You remember everything. Not in bitterness, but in precision. You remember how they smiled while pulling the trigger. How they laughed when your world cracked. How they shared your pain like gossip, devoured your silence like a feast, and treated your downfall like entertainment. You remember how quickly they turned. How loyalty evaporated when the crowd shifted. How they watched you bleed and said it was your fault. You remember the words that broke something in you, the betrayal behind a polite smiles. The pity that wasn't compassion, but superiority disguised as concern. You remember how alone it felt to suffocate in a room full of people who claimed to care. And you remember what you did with that pain. You didn't run. You didn't beg. You sat in it, breathed it, let it settle into your bones until it stopped burning and started forging. Until it became something more than agony, until it became clarity. And with that clarity, you were built. Not louder but stronger. Not faster but smarter. They expected a tantrum. You gave them transformation. They wanted drama. You gave them distance. You didn't respond because some wars are won by walking away, not in weakness, but in self-respect. Because when you stop responding, they stop existing in your world. And that's what kills them. Not your rage but your absence. Not your vengeance but your indifference. You stopped showing up to battles they desperately needed you in. You stopped feeding the fire they used to burn you. You walked through the flames and left them behind, still trying to convince the world that you owe them something. But you don't owe them a damn thing. You gave enough. Your kindness was weaponized. Your love was dissected. Your presence was taken for granted until it became a ghost they couldn't touch. And now they live in the wake of your departure, trying to fill the silence with noise that no longer reaches you. They can't hurt you anymore. Not because they've changed, but because you have. Because you finally realized that peace is not found in proving them wrong. It's found in no longer needing to. And that's the part they can't stomach. Because for them, everything is a performance. Everything is for show. They live off reactions, off validation, off being seen even if it's through chaos. But you're done performing. You're done explaining. You're done handing pieces of yourself to people who only show up to consume. They had their chance. They had the old you. Now they get nothing. No words. No presence. No access. Let them knock. Let them plead. Let them drown in the silence they once demanded from you. Because you learned what real power is. Not being feared. Not being followed. But being unreachable. Not above them but beyond them. Beyond their reach. Beyond their games. Beyond their illusions. You see it now clear as glass. Every game. Every manipulation. Every time they twisted reality to serve their ego. Every time they played victim after being the executioner. You see it all. And you walk on. Not for revenge. Not for applause. But because standing still would mean becoming like them. Trapped in a loop of self-inflicted misery. Chained to the past they keep rewriting. But you're the future they'll never touch. Because while they rot in what they destroyed, you rise from what they couldn't kill. You don't need to yell. You don't need to prove. You just keep moving, quiet, unstoppable, inevitable. And that movement, that's what haunts them. Because it means you didn't just survive them. You became something they'll never understand. They don't get to witness the inner world you build from rubble. They don't get to walk the halls of your new empire, forged in silence, lit by the fires they started. They don't get to touch the version of you that rose from their ashes because it's sacred. And they are not welcome. Let them watch from the sidelines, screaming into the void they created. Let them feel what you felt being invisible, being unheard, being unimportant. Because now the roles are reversed. And you don't need to lift a finger. Your growth is your strike. Your success is your scream. Your silence is your justice. Every win you take without announcing it. Every move you make without permission. Every breath you take without their influence. It carves another scar into their pride. They see you rising and pretend not to. They hear your name and pretend it doesn't sting. But deep down, it echoes. Not because you say anything, but because your existence contradicts their entire narrative. You were supposed to break. You were supposed to vanish. But you didn't. You endured. You adapted. You evolved. And now you live in a realm they'll never reach, not because they're incapable, but because they were too arrogant to believe they needed to change. While you became fluent in pain, fluent in silence, fluent in self-resurrection, they stayed frozen, stuck in the same cycles, clinging to illusions. Let them have it. Let them cling. You've outgrown that world. You are not here to return. You are not here to prove. You're here to be fully, fiercely, quietly. And that's the most dangerous thing you can do. To exist without needing their permission. To build without needing their blueprint. To rise without asking for their applause. Because now you understand. You are the storm they couldn't predict. You are the fire they couldn't extinguish. You are the truth they tried to bury and failed. And the more they try to catch up, the more it burns. Because you are not just ahead. You're gone. You no longer walk in their world, you eclipse it. And that silence, that's the sound of your empire expanding. That's the sound of your demons falling quiet. That's the sound of you owning every scar, every shadow, every shattered version of who you used to be. So don't stop now. Don't soften. Don't shrink. Don't apologize for how far you've come. You earned this solitude. You earned this power. You earned the right to leave their names behind. Because you are not what they said you were. You're what you chose to become. And you chose to become unstoppable.